If you work with data, you absolutely know the feeling. A pipeline runs, everything looks great, but the data itself, it's total garbage. Well, today we're diving into a tool that's built to stop that exact nightmare. Great Expectations. Let's see how this open source framework can bring some serious trust and reliability back to your data. So just picture this for a second. You get that beautiful green check mark. Your pipeline finished, no errors, success. But then, maybe it's hours, maybe it's days later, someone on the business team points out that the main dashboard is showing negative revenue, or that half the user email addresses are just null. This is what we call a silent data failure, and is an absolute nightmare for any data team. And the costs of these failures are huge. I mean, it's not just about a chart looking a little weird. Bad data leads to completely broken dashboards, reports that are dangerously inaccurate, and machine learning models that you've trained on, well, garbage. But honestly, the biggest cost? It's the loss of trust from your stakeholders and the countless engineering hours you burn just fighting instead of actually building cool stuff. Okay, but what if you could prevent all of this? What if you could bring the same kind of discipline to your data that software engineers have been using for decades with their code? That's the big idea here. Just imagine having unit tests, but for your data. That's the paradigm shift that Great Expectations brings to the table. And that brings us to the tool itself. Great Expectations, or GX for short. So the official definition is that it's a framework for describing your data with expressive tests, which it calls expectations, and then automatically validating that your data actually meets those rules every single time. The key here is that it forces you to take all those assumptions you have about your data and turn them into explicit, verifiable tests. And maybe the best part is that this isn't some brand new clunky platform you have to learn and manage. Nope. GX Core is a Python library. It's built to be flexible and to slide right into the data stack you're already using, whether that's Pandas, Spark, SQL, you name it. It meets you right where you are. Okay, so how does it actually work? Well, every GX workflow follows this really simple, logical pattern. Let's just take a quick, high-level look at the process so you have a mental map of what's going on. It really boils down to 4 fundamental steps. First, you get your GX environment set up. Second, you tell it how to connect to your data. Third, and this is the fun part, you define your expectations, those unit tests for your data. And finally, you run validations to actually check your data against those rules. It's simple, it's structured, and it's incredibly powerful. We're going to cover all of these steps in this series, but it all starts with step 1, setting up the environment. So let's get our hands dirty and actually walk through the installation. It's super quick. The good news is, getting started is incredibly simple. Pretty much as long as you have a modern version of Python installed and you can connect to the internet, you are good to go. Now, a quick pro tip. While you don't have to do this, we really recommend creating a virtual environment. It just keeps all your project dependencies clean and separate. Once that little command finishes, you just need to activate it. This basically steps you inside your new, isolated workspace for this project. And from there, it is just one simple command. Pip install Great Expectations. Pip does all the heavy lifting for you, and in just a few moments, you have the entire GX library ready to go. All right, with GX installed, it is time to introduce the single most important concept in this whole library, the data context. I want you to think of this as the central nervous system, or maybe the brain, of all your GX operations. Everything you do is going to start from here. So, what is this thing exactly? Well, the data context is a Python object that basically manages your entire setup. It keeps track of your data source configurations, all of your saved test suites, and the results from your validation runs. It's your main entry point for everything you do with GX. Now, here is where things get really good, especially if you've seen older versions of GX. The new V1 API, which they call the Fluent API, makes everything feel so much more natural and, well, Pythonic. In the past, you might have had to fiddle with these really complex configurations. Now, you just initialize the brain of the operation with one clean line of code, gx.getContext. It makes adding data quality feel like a natural part of your script, not some separate chore. So when you call getContext, you have a choice to make. By default, you get what's called an ephemeral context. Think of this like a temporary scratch pad. It's perfect for when you're just exploring data in a Jupyter notebook because nothing gets saved to disk. But For any real project, you're going to want a file-based context. This creates a dedicated Great Expectations directory that saves all your configurations, your tests, your results, everything. This is what lets you build a real, persistent data quality practice for your production pipelines. And that's pretty much it. In just a few minutes, we've talked about the huge problem that GX solves, and we've set up a complete local environment that's ready for action. You've got the library installed, and you know how to initialize the brain of the whole operation, the data context. So this brings us to the next big question, right? Our environment is all ready to go, but how do we actually connect it to our data? Whether that's a Pandas data frame you have, a SQL database, or a bunch of files sitting in the cloud. That's step 2 on our journey. And that's exactly what we'll cover in the next explainer. I'll see you there.